Congratulations.
My name is Susan Korbel. I'm running for County Commissioner Precinct 3. I have lived in San Antonio for 38 years. Started my own business, market research, 34 years ago when my son was born. There he is. So obviously I didn't start yesterday. I have been waiting for this all my life. I've been waiting to serve in my community in a way where I feel I can use my tools. My tools include a master's degree in urban planning and labor relations. I'll tell you why later. My PhD is in public administration. And I did write my thesis on the distribution of federal funds through a competitive grant process. The reason why that's interesting is that now I have those tools to be able to look for other sources of revenue as we try to build big projects that we want to do here at home. A little bit more about me. My company does consumer research. So what that means is we listen. I'm one of those people that calls you on the phone, or maybe you don't pick up anymore. We do email surveys, we do written surveys, but mostly we work with clients who want to solve problems. And so that can be either the Spurs, I worked with them for 8 years and won in one ring. I have worked with restaurants, I've worked with auto dealers for, maybe 20 years. My main source of revenue and pride is that I help large or small companies solve problems. And so that's what I'd like to do now with the county. When I started thinking about this, it was actually people calling me. I did not intend to be up here. I was very happy in my life, and I had my children, put them through NEISD schools. I was very proud. My son went off, played football at Baylor, went to law school, he's come back home, and my daughter has a master's in divinity from Yale University after going to Princeton. So I'd done my job as a mom. I had done my job setting up a company, and life is pretty good, except COVID hit. And so many problems have come to fore, and we have to find some solutions. The people who called me know that I have a planning background. They know that I'm very interested in transportation and in safety, two of the things that the county commissions are very involved in. I've also been very involved in helping people get to vote. I have been a precinct chair for a very long time, and one of the things that has been on my mind all the time is how can we get people in Texas to vote? Because as we know, there's an awful lot of people who are not voting. I believe in democracy, but democracy demands an educated electorate. Now, why is that important? It's important because unless we can have a dialogue and talk about the issues, we are unable to continue to solve our big problems. As I've gone around and to house parties or block walking, phone banking, what I've found is that a lot of people don't know what the county does. And that's partly because we have great employees who are doing a good job, and that is terrific. However, there's a lot of things that are going on with this $2.8 billion budget that's coming up of your tax dollars that nobody knows about. And so I am committed to being a communicator. I see one of my favorite endorsers coming in the door here. Thank you. I am endorsed by Judge Wolf, by Mayor Hardberger, and by Councilman John Courage. I mention those three people because they are, as far as I'm concerned, the kind of public servant that I would like to be. I would like to make sure that the county, which a lot of people don't know about, communicates as well as the city offices of John Courage do. As a matter of fact, if I get elected, I would like to take half of his staff, but he knows I won't let him. What does it mean to be responsive? Because that's transparency. Now, let me give you an example of what I think is going on that's troublesome. There was a, that's my time?
Yep.
But I want to talk about the troubles. Okay. Thank you very much.
Now, you're going to have plenty of time to
Okay.
answer questions, I'm sure. Grant?
Excuse me just a minute.
Yeah.
Do you want to turn the lights on so we see our speakers
Yeah.
better?
Sure.
Does that mean I get to go again?
Could be the lights that
Did they come on?
maybe the back will see well, maybe that
They
may
blink
be.
and then they quit.
Earlier, but, okay.
Just trying to turn the
Turn
screen
the
off.
agenda off.
Yeah, turn the agenda on. Yeah, that's good.
Betty, he's tall and good looking.
Yes,
Does that help?
I've seen both of them and they certainly are. I was more concerned with the back area. Actually, I can see very well.
They're on.
Okay, I can see good too. Fantastic.
Good deal. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you, Art, for the invitation to come and speak, and thank you to Susan for being here as well. This is an important race. Susan mentioned a little bit of it. County government's an important piece of our local government, and my background, I'm not a politician. I've never run for office before. I'm a first-time candidate. I'm a Marine combat veteran. I spent 10 years on active duty, another 10 years in the reserves. So I'm actually coming up on that time where I may be ending my reserve time in the Marine Corps. But public service has always been a part of my life. And once I left active duty, I came down here with my family to San Antonio. We have 3 kids, 12, 9, and 6, 2 girls and a boy. And I got into business. I spent 5 years at USAA in a variety of leadership and executive roles, Fortune 100 company, and then spent another 3 years over at Valero Energy doing innovation and strategy work for another Fortune 100 company. And that experience, I think, around problem solving, around solving big problems, budgeting, phase development on massive capital projects is all valuable when we talk about what county government does. Because county government is a big business. As Susan mentioned, $2.8, $2.9 billion in the last budget period. So when we start looking what's within that budget, I think that having some more common sense conservatism and that big government experience is helpful in solving those problems and looking at the budget that the county has. 5,000 employees. It is a big entity, and that doesn't even count or include state and federal money that flows through there, which is several $1 billion more. So the issues of the campaign in my mind have been focused on public safety being number one, because if we're not safe and secure in our community, then nothing else matters. And that's a fundamental responsibility of our local government, and we need to prioritize it. In the most recent budget, the proposed budget didn't even have any new manning for law enforcement. Ultimately, the compromise budget added a dozen new deputies, but I think we need a lot more than that. I think with crime rising, violent crime rising, and given the fact that our county is growing so quickly, that we need to do more to keep pace with that growth and make sure that we're addressing the rising crime that we see in our community. Transportation, another huge issue, especially in Precinct 3 with all the growth. And obviously we're dealing with that every day, whether it's out here on 1604 or 281, I-10, all the other roadways out there. Transportation is very complex, and there's a lot of different pools of money that factor into those kinds of projects. But it's something that we need to have a long-term strategic planning vision when it comes to transportation. So instead of thinking about 2 to 5 years out and what's right in front of us, looking 10 to 20 years out. And as we we see our county go from 2 million people to 4 million people, how are we going to manage that growth? Finally, property taxes, which I think is near and dear to everyone's heart. It's an issue that always comes up, but 28% increase in appraisals this past year, completely unsustainable, and we have to get a handle on that. Now, obviously, there's a state component to that. What I keep hearing is that out of the $27 billion in the rainy day fund, hopefully close to half of that could be used to buy down those property taxes going forward after this legislative session. We'll see what comes out of that, but there's also a component to local government here. And I think that as we start talking about, instead of talking about the tax rate, we need to talk about, given the fact that appraisals are going up so high, where's the year after year? And so that's something I want to fight against and push against if elected into this office. And I look forward to your questions. I look forward to this discussion here tonight. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will start off the Q&A by asking the first question, and then we will turn it over to the floor, or open it to the floor. And I ask that you ask questions and don't specify, and please be polite. And we will alternate, starting with Grant as far as answering the question. Please, when you answer, try to be concise. And again, don't speechify, just answer the question so that your opponent can answer it as well. That is the rest of it. Okay? And when you ask the questions, like I said earlier, you may ask it to one of the individual candidates or to the panel. So if you ask the panel, then I will alternate between the two. And I will ask the first question to the panel. And your predecessor, Rich DeBerry, was very interested in the county jail and had some issues with that and was proposing moving this jail to both stimulate growth in that part of town as well as having some, or perhaps solving some endemic problems. Grant, have you had any thoughts on this issue?
Okay. And you just want to give us a minute, or is it just answer the question?
Answer the question, but I'll cut you off if you're just
Okay, I won't do that. I'm normally pretty short-winded. So the jail. I think the first thing to think about with the jail is solving the safety issues that apparently have been identified in the two studies down there. We need to solve that first. I mean, we should already solve it. It should never come to the fact that these are being identified in these studies as safety issues and maintenance issues. So we need to make sure we invest the money there. There's another component with the jail that comes to staffing. There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of overtime. The sheriff and the commissioner's court have to get ahead of that, understand what the staffing really needs to be, what that equates to in terms of budget, in order to make sure that we're properly staffed there. With regard to the specifics of moving the jail, I don't have any position on that today. I think, this is something that needs to be studied, but I haven't been privy to the information and details of what that would look like in order to have like a specific position. Thank you. Susan?
So one of the things I was going to talk about that's a problem is transparency. There were two different, apparently, audits. One was ordered by the county commissioners, and I think Commissioner Berry was responsible for one of those, and one was by the sheriff. Unfortunately, when the county put together their budget, either we didn't have it and they had it, in which case it would have been nice if we'd seen that information, but they were passing a budget regarding the distribution of funding for the jail without the benefit of us seeing what the results of the audit were. Now, why is that important? We don't know exactly what is needed. And I agree with Grant. This is really important. We are not supposed to be in a situation where we make decisions about, one, should we have a new jail somewhere else, and two, what capacity it should be, until we see studies. Yes, I believe in studies. I think they're important. Now, as for whether it should be moved, I have no clue. I think that we need to know what are the capabilities. I know that we had on the staffing side a horrible pipeline problem where we were not able to fill those 300 positions. Now, I've been doing a lot of studies myself for different organizations that after COVID, we know there have been serious problems in getting people through the workforce. We also know that the pay scale of those people who are working there is not at the same level as some of the other public safety employees. So my feeling is that what we have to start with is definitely move people through the pipeline, get ourselves up and trained, and make sure people aren't doing all the overtime that they have to do, which incurs so much extra money, and find out exactly where we are as soon as we can, and that would be one of my top priorities.
Thank you, Susan. Excuse me just a second. We really don't need the screen on. I can't turn it off from my computer, but I can turn it off up here.
Art, since we really aren't on the timer, do you
Yeah.
mind if I just add
Sure.
more thought?
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything that was said there. One other thing I just note for is just that when it comes to the recruitment process, my understanding is that a lot of these detention officers they want to be in law enforcement. They want to be out on patrol. They want to be police officers. But they are entering and going into detention roles, and then they find this is not for me. I don't want to be here. And so I think part of the solution here is starting up front and make sure we're recruiting for the right role, and that people have clarity on what that role is going to look like. And then I think there's also a compensation aspect to this, because the disparity between the SAPD and Bexar County Sheriff, we need to obviously take a look at that as well.
Okay. Just
Do I get to go another one too?
No, I just want to make sure that both of you understand, and the audience as well. This isn't a debate, so I don't want a back and forth.
No, but we're agreeing with you.
Yeah, you are, and that's why I didn't object to Grant while he was talking, because he wasn't conflicting with you or arguing with you. He was trying to expand upon what you said. And that's fine, but I'll allow that certainly. But I just want to be sure that we all understand the ground rules, that we are not back and forth, one against the other, and the audience is the same way.
So I just had one little thing.
Okay, one little thing.
And that is that whether we need more jail room has a lot to do with an overabundance of people in the jail who may not need to be in the jail. And so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyway, he got an extra one, so
All right, first from the floor.
It's a general question for Susan. So what initiatives and changes would you seek in the Wayne County? It's a general question. What initiatives and changes would you seek in the Wayne County government operates?
thank you for that. So we have a lot of organizations that are working in different ways together, but also separately. I would like to see a long-term planning process put into shape where we include housing, and by that I mean starting a Bexar County Housing Trust that then adds in with transportation, because while MPO is doing good work and VIA is doing good work, we just can't keep building without thinking about how we get around together, and infrastructure that includes the ability to have good air, good water, and preserve the natural beauty of our city. Now, what does that take? That takes working with city government, but it also takes working with all these other organizations, including SAWS, and and honestly, I don't understand why the county doesn't have any representation on SAWS, and CPS. In that way, I'm very much aligned with some of the opportunities that some of the other candidates have been talking about in terms of working together in a larger way. I really believe that we are on the cusp of making this a truly international city, but the only way we can do this is we are going to be growing so fast as some of the population figures are. Are we going to be 2 million people? Some people have said 4 million. Some candidates have said 6 million. If we're going to look like Houston, I hope we change before we get there.
Next question. Come back, yeah, hi Joe.
Hi, Art. Number one, Art, thank you for continuing to lead this group. My good friend John Courage and I don't agree on everything. Hi, John. I think John Courage and I do agree that property taxes, and particularly appraisals, have gotten completely out of control, and that appraisals is the primary cause of the problem. Do either of you have any proposals specifically as to what the county can do or others could do to impact the appraisal end of that equation?
Susan, you're first this time.
Hi there, and thank you for your service. You've done so much for our community. Number one, not everything is being appraised fairly. Every year, Diego Bernal puts in a bill in the state legislature so that all property, commercial and residential, will be the transactions will be disclosed. So right now, there's a great deal that's off the books that could help in terms of alleviating the burden. On the other end, obviously we know supply and demand is way out of whack here. So that's why I had recommended a Bexar County Housing Trust to stimulate a lot more development so that we are bringing down the overall demand. Now, on the appraisal side, I think that probably I don't know enough about the innards of the appraisal process. I've been through it and I was very dissatisfied with it. I think that probably there is room for improvement, but until I get in there and in the weeds, I'm clueless. Sorry.
Brent?
So appreciate the question. So I mean, first of all, I wouldn't generally disagree with the idea that, you know, transparency around property appraisals, whether they're private or whether they're commercial, you know, is something we should push towards. With regard to appraisals, yes, clearly appraisals are driving it. I think if you really try to simplify it, either you can try to cap appraisal increases and or lock appraisals in, or, you know, the alternative is what I've been kind of framing, which is probably simpler, is just if appraisal goes up this much, property tax rate has to drop this far, right? So balance that out, and then from that point we can talk about inflation, we can talk about, hey, we need to give our deputies raises, or whatever the conversation is. But those are kind of the two factors, right? Either you're trying to freeze or lock the appraisal, or you're trying to drop the property tax to balance with it. But the problem is, we've always started with the appraisal goes up, and then we start talking about where the tax rate was last year, which gives us another 10-12% increases in revenue year over year. So that's kind of the issue as I see it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Next question. Come on, okay, Bill?
Yeah. The county attorney recently said we're going to relax some of our standards on trespassing, simple assault, and also crimes like theft of less than $750. And our city manager, Eric, was here a couple of meetings ago. We talked about that. And I agree with you. We don't want to fill up our jails with too many people on simple things like possession of marijuana. But one of the problems that we have is that we arrest these people and the county attorney doesn't charge them. police can arrest them, the sheriffs can arrest them, but we don't charge them.
The DA.
Yeah, the DA, yeah. So the thing is we have, Eric mentioned that because of this, we have several people in town that are committing multiple crimes and they're in and out. So what would you do at the county level to talk to the district attorney to get people that have multiple felonies and they keep in a revolving door system? The police arrest them, the sheriff's arrest them, and they get kicked out on the street. What would you do about that to both of you?
My turn.
Yeah.
So, generally I have concerns with the cite and release program or catch and release or soft on crime policies that you're talking about. I think it's a slippery slope, and if there's not consequences for crime, then ultimately those criminals are going to be repeat criminals and potentially escalate into larger crimes. So I don't agree with that program. Clearly there's other conversations here about mental health or other issues that could be at play, and providing some ability for the DA. They're obviously always going to have prosecutorial jurisdiction there in making those decisions. But I think blanket saying that any of these crimes on this list, go for it. We're not going to do anything to you. It is the wrong way, in my mind, to address our rising crime that we have in the community. And to your question about what can you do about it, so I'm not the district attorney, but the district attorney does have to come to commissioner's court and get their budget approved, and so you have that power of the purse authority to use the opportunity to address the issue as you see it and what the statistics are showing. And I think those statistics point to the case that it's not successful in addressing crime. It may be successful in not filling up the jail or keeping the jail from overflowing or having to find a solution there. But in terms of the crime that we're seeing in our community, it's not helping. It's aggravating the problem.
So I was here when Chief McManus came and spoke, and he had very, very good points about this. And I wondered in my head, I guess where else would I wonder? Why we don't have better communication about what this individual is that is being discussed on the street, whether he's whether his infraction is that he is panhandling or if he's doing something else, and do we have more information about whether there is a prior charge of any kind? And so I didn't ask the question that night, but I wonder, because we certainly don't want to do cite and release or catch and release with somebody who has a prior involvement, because obviously if this is multiple times, we are looking at a waste of tax dollars of these police constantly talking to somebody. I don't know what that process is. I don't know what that process is with the county. And it doesn't appear to me that the county and the city are as close in their communications as they could be. So there might be some time when